This house belongs to my son. Pack your things and leave. Margaret shouted, waving some papers in my face. Her fancy clothes and perfect gray hair couldn't hide the anger in her eyes. I stood in my kitchen, sipping my coffee. This was the home I had renovated over the last 5 years, and now my mother-in-law was trying to take it from me. My name is Olivia Chin, and at 34, I never thought I'd be fighting for my home against the woman who had made my marriage miserable for 8 years. Did you hear me? Margaret snapped. This house belongs to James. It always has. I set my coffee down. Interesting timing, Margaret. James is away, and suddenly you show up with these papers. She smirked. There's nothing sudden about it. This house was bought with our family money. You have no right to stay, especially now that James has realized your marriage is over. I stayed calm. And what exactly has James realized? Margaret sat on my couch like she owned it. He's meeting with divorce lawyers. He finally understands that marrying someone like you was a mistake. I almost laughed. For years, she'd looked down on me, insulting my middle-class background and my job as a restoration architect. But her words didn't hurt anymore. I think you should check your facts, Margaret, I said, walking to my antique desk, the same one she once mocked me for buying. Margaret narrowed her eyes. What facts? I know everything about this family's property. Clearly you don't, I said, running my fingers along the desk. A couple of months ago, I found some old documents from 1985, the year this house was built. Do you remember that year? She hesitated. That's ancient history. It doesn't matter. It matters a lot, I said, because the original deed wasn't in your family's name at all. Margaret shot up from the couch, her papers falling to the floor. You're lying. No, you had fake copies. The real deed says this house belonged to Eleanor Wright, your husband's first wife, the woman you told everyone had abandoned him. But in truth— Shut up. Margaret's face turned pale. You made everyone believe Eleanor left, but she didn't. She died under mysterious circumstances, and this house was meant for her son, Thomas Wright, not James. The Stepson you erased from the family history. Margaret's hands trembled. Those are lies. I found Thomas, I continued. He's a history professor in Oregon now. We talked. He remembers everything. And last week, he signed an affidavit reclaiming his inheritance, including this house. I showed her an email from my lawyer. The police are reopening Eleanor's case too. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. James will never believe you. He already knows, I said, picking up one of her fallen papers. He's not on a business trip. He's in Oregon, meeting Thomas. Turns out, he's not as loyal to you as you thought. Margaret's face crumbled. She gathered her papers with shaking hands. You've ruined everything, she hissed. This isn't over. You're right, I said, opening the front door. The police will be here tomorrow. You might want to get a lawyer. As she hurried to her car, I felt no joy, only sadness for the family she had broken. But at least now, the truth would finally come out. I picked up my coffee and looked out at the garden Eleanor had planted long ago. Her roses were blooming, their deep red petals proof that some roots run deeper than anyone realizes. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Just finished talking with Thomas. Coming home tomorrow. I'm so sorry for everything. Thank you for finding the truth. I smiled, touching the old deed in my pocket. Justice can come in unexpected ways, hidden in old furniture, and in the courage to face the past. The next morning, I sat in our living room across from Detective Sarah Mills, watching as she examined the documents I found in the secretary desk. The early morning light streamed through the windows, casting shadows across the worn papers that had changed everything. These are quite something, Detective Mills said, carefully placing the original deed back into its protective sleeve. And you found these while restoring the furniture? Yes. I nodded, remembering the moment the hidden compartment had sprung open. At first, I thought they were just old building records, but then I saw Eleanor's name and things started falling into place. The detective made another note in her pad. Mrs. Wright's death was ruled accidental at the time, a fall down the basement stairs. But there were questions that were never answered. Because Margaret made sure they weren't asked, James said quietly from beside me. He'd returned late last night, his meeting with Thomas having lasted longer than expected. The dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and hard truths. Tell me about Thomas, Detective Mills prompted, turning to a fresh page. James ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I had no idea I had a brother. All these years, Mother told me she married my father when he was a young widower. She never mentioned Eleanor, never said anything about Thomas. His voice cracked slightly. He has her eyes. Eleanor's eyes. When I saw him yesterday, it was like seeing all the family photos Mother destroyed coming back to life. I squeezed his hand, feeling the slight tremor in his fingers. The past 24 hours had shaken his world to its core. Thomas remembers the night Eleanor died, I added, pulling out the signed statement he'd given us. He was 12, hiding at the top of the stairs. He saw Margaret and Eleanor arguing about the house. Eleanor had discovered something about Margaret's past, something that would have prevented her marriage to Thomas's father. Detective Mills leaned forward. And what was that? Margaret was still married to someone else, James said bitterly. Thomas found the proof. Marriage records that showed her first husband was very much alive when she married our father. Eleanor threatened to expose her, and then she had her accident, the detective finished, her expression grim. Why didn't Thomas come forward before? Margaret convinced everyone he'd run away, I explained. She intercepted his calls, forged letters to his father, even paid people to say they'd seen him in another state. By the time Thomas finally got back in contact, his father had died believing his son had abandoned him. The detective's phone buzzed, and she checked it quickly. The forensics team is ready to examine the basement. With your permission. James nodded numbly. As the detective left to coordinate with her team, he turned to me, his eyes haunted. How did I not see it? All these years, the way she controlled everything, everyone. She even tried to control us. She almost succeeded. I reminded him gently. Remember last year, when she almost convinced you to put the house in her name for tax purposes? He grimaced. If you hadn't insisted on having our lawyer review everything, God, Olivia, I'm so sorry. For all the times I didn't stand up to her, for letting her treat you like an outsider. Hey, I touched his cheek, making him look at me. You're standing up to her now. That's what matters. The sound of cars pulling up outside drew our attention. Through the window, we saw Margaret being escorted from a police car, her usual impeccable appearance replaced by something more frantic. Behind her, another car arrived and a tall man stepped out, his gray streaked hair and familiar eyes unmistakable. Thomas, James whispered, standing up. He came. We met them at the front door. The two brothers, separated by 30 years of lies, faced each other in the morning light. Then Thomas stepped forward and hugged James, decades of lost time conveyed in that simple gesture. I'm sorry, Thomas said as they pulled apart. I should have tried harder to find you, to tell you the truth. You're here now, James replied, his voice rough with emotion. That's what matters. Margaret, standing between two officers, watched this reunion with visible distaste. This proves nothing, she snapped. You can't believe the words of a runaway who abandoned his family. Thomas turned to her, his expression calm but firm. I didn't run away, Margaret. You made sure I couldn't come home. But I never stopped trying to find the truth about what happened to my mother. Mrs. Anderson. Detective Mills emerged from the house, holding an evidence bag. We found something interesting in the basement. Traces of blood behind the old wood paneling. Blood that's been there for 30 years. Would you like to explain that? Margaret's composure finally shattered completely. She was going to ruin everything, she hissed. All my careful plans, my new life. I couldn't let her destroy that. The detective nodded to the officers, who began reading Margaret her rights. As they led her to the police car, she turned back one last time, her eyes wild. James, don't let them do this. I'm your mother. But James stood firm, his brother beside him, as Margaret was taken away. The web of lies she'd woven had finally unraveled, bringing down the careful facade she'd maintained for 3 decades. Thomas walked slowly into the house, his hand trailing along the wallpaper. Mom loved this place, he said softly. She used to say it was where our family would always be together. James joined him, looking around as if seeing the house for the first time. Tell me about her, please. As the brothers settled in the living room, sharing memories and bridging the years of separation, I slipped quietly into the kitchen to make coffee. Through the window, I could see Eleanor's roses swaying in the breeze, their blooms a vibrant reminder that truth, like flowers, can emerge from the darkest places. 6 months after Margaret's arrest, I stood in Eleanor's garden, planting new roses alongside the old ones. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and fresh earth. So much had changed since that confrontation in our living room. Yet some things remained constant, like these roses, stubborn and beautiful, refusing to be erased. "Need a hand?" Thomas's voice called from the patio. He'd been staying with us while the legal proceedings continued, helping piece together the fragments of their broken family history. Always I smiled, handing him a trowel. "These heritage roses are from the same nursery Eleanor used to buy from." Thomas knelt beside me, his hands expertly working the soil. "Mom would love this. She always said a garden needs old and new growth to thrive." He paused, a familiar shadow crossing his face. "The detective called this morning." Margaret took the plea deal. I sat back on my heels, watching his expression carefully. "How do you feel about that?" 20 years, he said quietly. "It doesn't bring Mom back, but at least now everyone knows the truth. No more hiding, no more lies." The sound of James's car pulling into the driveway drew our attention. He'd been meeting with the family lawyer, finalizing the paperwork to legally restore Thomas's inheritance. My husband looked different these days, lighter somehow, as if uncovering the truth had freed him from a weight he carried his whole life. "It's done," he announced, joining us in the garden. "The house is officially in both our names, Thomas, just like Mom wanted." He looked around at the half-planted roses. "Need another gardener?" I handed him a pair of gloves. Eleanor's garden could always use more love. As we worked together, I thought about the documents found in that old desk, not just the deed, but Eleanor's letters and diary entries. She'd written about her hopes for her sons, her dreams for this house as a place where family could heal and grow. In a way, 30 years later, her wish was finally coming true. The investigation had revealed more than just Margaret's crimes. We discovered that Eleanor had been a talented artist, her paintings stored away in the attic by Margaret. Thomas and James spent evenings going through them, their mother's vision of the world captured in vibrant oils and soft watercolors. "I'm thinking of opening a gallery," Thomas said, patting soil around a new rose bush. "Showing Mom's work, maybe featuring other local artists too. There's that empty storefront downtown." James nodded enthusiastically. "The old Miller building? It's perfect. Those big windows, the natural light." He turned to me. "What do you think, Olivia? Want to help restore another piece of history?" I felt warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. This was what Eleanor had wanted, her sons working together, building something meaningful, turning pain into possibility. "I'd love to," I said. "We could preserve the original architecture while creating a modern gallery space. Honor the past while embracing the future." Later that evening, after Thomas had gone home, James and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The newly planted roses cast long shadows across the lawn, their silhouettes merging with Eleanor's original garden. "Thank you," James said softly, taking my hand. "For not giving up, for finding the truth, for bringing my brother back to me." I squeezed his hand. "I just restored an old desk. Eleanor did the real work. She left us everything we needed to uncover the truth. She knew someone would find it eventually." "She would have loved you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have her spirit, her way of seeing beauty in broken things and making them whole again." Inside the house, Eleanor's painting of the garden, newly restored and framed, hung in a living room. Thomas had found it hidden behind other canvases, dated just days before her death. In it, red roses bloomed against a storm-dark sky, their petals catching the light like flames. The doorbell rang, and I knew it would be Detective Mills with updates about Margaret's sentencing. But for this moment, I stayed where I was, watching the real garden merge with its painted twin in the fading light. Two versions of the same dream, one from the past, one unfolding now, finally in harmony. "Ready?" James asked, standing and offering his hand. I nodded, rising to face whatever came next. After all, that's what this house had always been about, facing truth with courage, nurturing growth through adversity, and believing in the power of love to outlast lies. Eleanor had known it. She'd hidden proof of that love in the heart of this house, trusting that someday someone would find it, and in finding it, we'd all found our way home.